Hey guys, my name is Josh Smith from Montana Knife Company, and we're here today to talk about which knife is best for different types of game. I get a lot of questions about which knife should I buy for this or for that, depending on what the customer is going out to do in the field. So I thought we would talk about this a little bit. Let's talk about big game first of all, because most of the people buying our knives lately are going big game hunting. The question really is, what do you consider big game? It's really from deer or antelope on up. You know, we've got the small game, which is, coyote hunting, varmint hunting, that kind of stuff, trapping, and then, there's the whole fishing side. But for big game, it's deer, elk, moose, bear, caribou, and then anything in Africa on the big game side. So personally, my favorite large game, bigger knife is our Stonewall knife. This is a little bigger blade than our other blades. It's got a really nice skinning profile to it. It still has a tip that you can use. It's got a larger handle you can really get a good grip on, and you can really actually do some pretty heavy work with this blade. It's still nice and thin at the edge, so you guys can resharpen it yourself. It's hardy, it's on the thicker side compared to our lightweight, thinner knives. So you can do a little bit of hard use work and not worry about breaking that knife. One of the big things too is really important is the sheath. This knife needs to fit securely in this sheath, snaps into place, and you can attach it to your pack or your belt or put it in your pack, stuff like that. The other really good knife for big game hunting is our Blackfoot blade, which is this one right here. This is on the smaller side, and I personally prefer a little smaller knife. It doesn't weigh a lot. It's easy to carry and have it out of the way. And if you know what you're doing on an animal, you can break it down with a smaller blade. This blade, though, isn't as hardy as far as like heavy use, hard, like prying and that kind of work. It does have a nice little tip on it for caping out an animal. And honestly, if you're doing a big game hunt, like if I was personally going to Alaska, I would actually take a couple knives. I would take a lighter weight, smaller blade for finer work, and then I would take a larger blade, a hardier blade for some of the heavy, hard breakdown stuff. And it's always a good idea if you're way out in the woods, or you're flown into a lake or something like that in Alaska, to have a backup in case you do lose a knife. That way you're not in the woods without a blade. So that kind of covers the big game. The other knife I should mention too is our Super Cub. Again, that's a bigger blade, drop point hunter, hard use, heavy use knife that's very, very good for big game. And that'd be another one that I would take to Alaska along with a small knife. Okay, so let's get into the small game. This is kind of from that deer on down in animal size. Deer is that weird one where it's definitely considered big game, but it's still not a real big animal. Axis deer are really small. I went to Spain last year and shot a fallow deer, red deer. Fallow deer are really small. And so that's where we get into these smaller blades here. The Blackfoot to me is a great one because it really does cross over from the small game to the big game. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I like this knife for big game, but it is small. In small game, this knife is perfect. It can do everything that you need it to do. It's plenty big to break anything down. I have a lot of friends that do a lot of trapping, varmint stuff, coyotes, that kind of stuff. So the Blackfoot is a really great blade for that. I will say our Speed Goat is becoming one of our, becoming our customer's favorite knife, or one of the favorites. It's super light, it's 1.5 ounces. It's got the paracord on it to be able to use, take it off, and use that to drag out an animal, to hang meat up, to do different things, repair things. This Speed Goat is an awesome knife. It's out of the way. It's a really great knife for small game where you're not going to need a big heavy use knife. And it's pretty strong for how light and how thin it is. The other knife for small game is our Mini Goat, which is just a mini Speed Goat. This Mini Goat, again, is really nice in small game, but it's definitely on the lighter side. It's definitely not as hardy for prying or doing heavy use, but it's great for little detail work. If you're turning, the eyes or the paws or something like that on a really small animal, or taking apart a rabbit or a squirrel, stuff like that, this little Mini Goat is great. The other knife that we have is our Stoned Goat, which is basically just a Speed Goat with a skinning profile blade, a little bigger belly. It's great as well. And then lastly, we kind of get into the waterfowl space, our bird and trout. And we are coming out with our mini goat in stainless steel. I think stainless steel in our Blackfoot, our speed goat, and our mini goat are really all great options for that burden trout. You know, the one thing I will say about the G10 handle, which is the hard handle on our knives, is it's really good in a wet environment. It's really nice and gives you a good grip when it's bloody. The paracord can get a little cruddy and stuff, though you can really wash it out well with hot water and dish soap. So that really doesn't bother me. And quite frankly, if you use our Generations program and you send the speed goats back in, we will rewrap them for you for free and sharpen them. So I think a lot of our customers are finding that the paracord is not as big a concern as they thought. In the wet environments though, you know, definitely a stainless blade, especially if you're around salt water. Stainless steel, the Magna Cut is definitely the way to go in that. I would avoid the carbon steel blades. Lastly, in the fishing side, you know, we get into the larger fish, salmon, steelhead, that kind of stuff, anything out in the deep sea. Our fillet blade is great for filleting fish, breaking those fish down, stuff like that. So that kind of gives you a long-winded answer. I get a lot of questions on social about which knife to buy, and it really kind of comes down to what you're gonna hunt, what do you prefer, how big is your hand, and some of those things. So the ultimate answer, and I know I'm sitting here trying to sell you guys knives, but I really do believe in it. The ultimate answer is you might need a couple knives that you switch back and forth from depending on what you're doing that's perfect for the job. But if you need one knife to do everything, it's probably our Blackfoot. That's me personally. Small game, large game, fish, bird, everything. The Blackfoot's the knife. So thanks again for watching this, guys. I know that was a bit long, but wanted to get in a little detail for you. So check out our knives online. Thanks again.